I'm just going to go back to the toolkit and kind of walk you through the steps for those of you who are like, attended this just training, and like, I'm down, I want to be an evaluator. The things that, that could be helpful to you. I noticed in the chat and some of the questions that have come up have been around the minimum qualifications. So I don't want people to get too hung up on that. We had to sort of start somewhere. What I would say to you is if you're really interested in doing this work and you have some background in substance use disorder treatment and you have the right license, call me and talk to me. And let's just kind of talk through those things. So try not to get too hung up on that. The other thing I want to say about this is we've never done this process before. We've never thought about how do we have an approved evaluator list, how do we cultivate this. So we have this idea of how we think it should go, it might go. My guess is we haven't thought through everything, and this will be a learning process for everybody. I really see this as a collaborative process between you and us, and how do we help together work with our healthcare professionals. So we might have this, you must do this, you must do that. Try to just understand that comes from a place of, we're just trying to start somewhere, and we can kind of work out the bugs together. So I just wanted to say that. So if we go back to the template, I introduced you to, we have a template that sort of has all of the things that Dr. Teitelbaum went over in terms of what are the essential parts, components of an evaluation. We have some samples of just, you know, a non-multidisciplinary evaluation, a multidisciplinary evaluation, and then just some sample ideas of return to work recommendations. And then we have this checklist. And this is just, this isn't a like you have to do this sort of thing. This is just sort of a helpful tool for you to go, okay, have I hit all these major things? In terms of what should be in the evaluation, the deadlines, and then just some kind of things that could come up. You know, if some new information became available after you met with them, to contact us, and you know, you could do an addendum to that. We've talked about only discussing level of care and not referring people to a specific treatment program. And then one key piece, because typically people will be getting the evaluation, then we'll be referring them out, is typically the evaluees will need a copy of that evaluation. So let's say they go see Debbie for an evaluation and we send them to, I'm just making this up, Turning Point or something. We would want Turning Point to be able to have that evaluation to see why that level of care is recommended, because lo and behold, guess what happens when I send them, making this up, the treatment center, they say, I don't know why. I don't know why I'm here or why they recommended residential treatment, because I don't do any of this stuff. And so it's important that you're getting, you know, that they get that copy of the evaluation. So that's just a helpful, quick checklist. Again, it's not like you have to use this. We just tried to put things together to be helpful for you.
Your department send it to the treatment center?
You could kind of do it two ways. And I think it really depends on your preference, and some places do it differently. Some evaluators have the evaluee sign a release of information to themselves. The evaluee can then have the copy of the evaluation, and I'd be prepared for that, because a lot of people want to read their evaluations, you know, and I think there might be in some cases where you have to say this might not be good for them, but for the most part, they can get that if they sign a release, and that way they can take it to where it needs to go. You could also, they might also just contact you and say, hey, I've been referred to Positive Sobriety Institute, could you send the evaluation to them? So it could kind of go either way. We try to instruct them to get their own copy. It just seems to create less hassle in the long run. But, you know, a lot of people just want to send it directly because of issues that come up that way. So I hope that answers your question. So there's the checklist. And then we have an application form, and it's pretty straightforward. just asks you some history, asks about other types of evaluations you may be able to do. And again, I want to point out that we're kind of focused on issues related to substance use disorder, but the rest of the division really has a need for evaluators to look at other types of issues. We do too, but them probably more so in terms of psychosexual evaluations, boundary issues. If you do those types of evaluations now, talk to Jennifer because she wants to hear from you. Pain management evaluations, neurocognitive testing, if you have the ability to do those things, please let us know. So that's the application. I won't really go through that. So I think, we hope that all the things that you would need are really in this toolkit available on our website. And really what I would say is this isn't rigid, this is just the idea that we had of how it would go. So please just reach out to me if this is something you're interested, ask me questions, email me, we'll walk through the process together. And once you become, once we get all the materials and you say I'm in, and you're approved, we will let you know and we'll add you to our approved list. And again, the rest of the division is likely to adopt this list. I have to work with those bureau managers about how, their process will look different because it's just a different model and a different system, and they'll have to sort of decide their process. I think that's it about the toolkit. I just kind of wanted to go back to the presentation and talk a little bit about just our process, what that looks like. Wait, here, way further down in the presentation. Okay. Okay, so just in terms of referral logistics, and again, this is for Utah Professionals Health Program. It'll be different if you're getting a referral from the boards or because someone's just been given a stipulation in order. But typically, I like to provide people at least 3 options of you can go to these 3 evaluators. That's important for a lot of reasons because people often come to us and they may be in a place where they don't see that they have an issue, they're not really ready to engage in the process, and it helps give them a sense of, I have some choice in this, I can talk to these evaluators, I can make some decisions, here's a group of approved. We don't really want to be in a place where we're only referring to one place. There's just a lot of issues when one person or one treatment facility is you're only working with them. Once the licensee picks the evaluator, ask them to sign a release of information. Try to do that within 24 hours, and then I will reach out to the evaluator and provide collateral information. I'll do that a number of different ways, either a phone conversation, a secure email with some background information. And so I'll be reaching out to you to provide that collateral information. If for some reason something happened and you didn't hear from me or the person went ahead and had the evaluation and we weren't aware, we just ask you to go ahead and do the evaluation, but don't give them a recommendation, have them sign the release for us or for Doppel or whoever else, so you're kind of performing this blind evaluation. And then in terms of toxicology testing, I kind of talked about in the beginning is in most cases, we're arranging the testing, so they will have, we try to do that pretty quickly because it can take about 2 weeks or so to get some of the testing back. So we'll arrange for that on on that application form. If you have the means and ability to do the mass spectrometer testing, we won't accept dipstick testing as Dr. Lubin suggested or talked about in his presentation. Let us know that on your application form, because some facilities like to do that on their own for different reasons. But,
I have to make sure it's chain of custody.
Oh.
Some labs can do a lot of that testing, but it's not forensic.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Beth. Beth made the point that it really needs to be a lab that can do chain of custody and that is forensic level. So, so that's another reason we would, on your application form, we would need a lot more details about, the labs you use and the chain of custody and that sort of thing. But we are able to do the testing if you don't have the capacity to do that. The other piece, too, is although we don't really want to get in the role of interpreting results for you, because we want to sort of have an arm's length reach between the evaluation process and the information we're providing. But if the testing comes from us, as Dr. Lubin indicated, we'd be happy to give his contact information, and you could say, hey, Dr. Lubin, what does this path test really mean? And so that you can use that in your report. Once you've met with the participant and completed the evaluation, again, we just ask that you give us a preliminary update. It could be that form. It could be an email to me saying, hey, I met with Joe and I'm kind of thinking this, but I really need to get some more collateral information. Or definitely they're not safe to practice, but I still need to talk to. Oh, thank you. Oh, I wasn't in presenter mode, huh? Thank you. That's better. Really trying to look at a 10-day time frame for getting the report back. We understand with testing and collateral information, that's not always possible, but just the piece is keeping us informed. Like, hey, you know, we're still waiting for this path, or we're trying to get a hold of the neurologist, or whatever the case is. So just letting us know if there's any kind of delay. And then once we receive the evaluation back, we have a process that we review it in our clinical team meetings with Dr. Simpson. If any questions come out of that evaluation, like, this isn't really making sense, or we don't quite understand how you came to this conclusion, we sort of have a reconciliation process where we might reach out to you and say, hey, could you help us understand how you came to this or whatever, and have a conversation about that. And that's not to be like, you did this wrong. I really see this as a learning growth process, a collaborative process. So be aware of that. And then we sort of talked about these things earlier, but really, you know, if you can't get a patient, question?
Sorry, yeah, just in line with that previous thing. I'm wondering if when you talk with other states that have gotten this up and running or in your planning, if there's sort of like a peer review group that would be available for consultation or for bouncing ideas off if you have a particular case that feels you're not quite sure what direction to go. Is there the ability to have like, you know, someone else that you can talk to who's done this training, who's a part of the
I think
referral group?
so. The question is there an idea or plans to have like a peer group that if you're doing evaluations, you could reach out to other peers? We hadn't really thought that, but I think that's an awesome idea. And one thing I was going to talk about at the end is we were thinking about some of the other programs. I think it's Michigan. They have like a quarterly provider meeting where evaluators and treatment providers get together and they might present cases, also obviously confidentially, maybe evaluations that they struggled with. And so I think that's a forum I was going to sort of see if anyone's interested. I think as we get this list going, reaching out to you and saying, hey, is this of interest? And it sounds like I see lots of heads nodding that could be valuable. So we don't have plans to do that, but I think it's a really good idea to have colleagues you can bounce things off of. We've talked about conflicts of interest, and I think just in summary, to sort of sift out how these evaluations might be different from clinical evaluations you're used to doing is really just that collateral information is key. We probably will reject an assessment that doesn't have collateral information. Well, not probably, we will. So the collateral information is key, coming from us, coming from Doppel, whoever it was that referred them. We got to have collateral information. Dr. Teitelbaum talked about how spouses or family members are a really good source, and if you can, someone from the workplace. Again, only level of care recommendations we will refer to an agency approved. Accurate diagnosis, really listing out the criteria and justifying why they meet that criteria. It's really important in a forensic level of, for any care. And then making sure the evaluation includes a summary of the toxicology testing was done, and then the safety to practice statement. Those are the pieces really that we need for our program and to help our participants. I talked about this a little bit this morning, but we belong to the Federation of State Physician Health Programs, which is basically programs like ours around the country. And they really guide best practices in the work that we do. And any one of you, they have different levels of membership. One of them, I forget what it's called, but if you're like a treatment provider or someone providing services for people in a PHP, that's a level of membership that you can join. That gets, the thing about this is, in a lot of situations when we're talking about treatment specific to healthcare professionals, we're in a position where we're sending a lot of people, in some cases, out of state because we don't have any treatment programs here that really have the expertise in working with healthcare professionals. It's similar, some programs specialize with working with the HIMSS program and with pilots. So what we'd really love to see over the next couple of years is local treatment providers who are really cultivating this expertise. And so we're not always having to refer people out because, a lot of life circumstances make that very difficult for people, and it's not always feasible. So one way, if this is something as a treatment agency or an individual provider, if you're really interested in cultivating a track for professionals or whatever, is to consider joining the Federation, because that gives you access to conferences where you can talk with other physician health programs. I get calls many times, emails saying, hey, we have a participant in Georgia who wants to go do treatment here in Utah. Are they approved by you? And unfortunately, I'm in a place to say we don't really have any approved treatment programs here. I would like to say, yeah, here's 3 places, and these are great places, and they know, they work with PHPs, and they'll know you because they've seen your faces. So evaluating if that's worth, the cost and the time for you. And then it also gives you access to the latest guidelines that were published. That helps you really understand how physician health programs operate and why we do the things that we do. It helps give you that baseline understanding. But the other thing, and I think particularly for folks who are interested in the multi-day evaluations or doing treatment specific to professionals, is in these latest guidelines, it does really start to talk about the criteria for credentialing and what programs need to have in place. So kind of give you a head start if you're serious about this to the credentialing process that's likely going to roll out, I'm not sure, in the next year or two. So I just want to talk a little bit about membership to think about that as an option. It does require sponsorship from a PHP. So if you decide, hey, this is something I'm really interested in, let me know, because I'm willing to sponsor any programs or evaluators who are interested in being a part of, the FSPHP. A lot of the conferences we go to, different treatment programs will do some sponsorship. So it's a way to promote the program too nationally, your program. And then I just threw up that idea of, I think it would be helpful, because I think we're all learning, we're figuring out how to do this, how to help our professionals, if we had some sort of provider meeting, or maybe it's a lunch and learn or something where we can share cases, talk about issues, things that we're seeing, that there's some gaps or something. So it's kind of the direction I'd like to go. Yes, Beth?
And also I think that would help I think interacting like that would help bring more people into the process, to do, because, you may be an evaluator for somebody in one position, and then you may be a treater for somebody else, depending on where you are. And so, and that helps us all kind of just get a bigger network, because that's been the real problem. And, Utah, since I've been here, at least, that we don't have a network of people that have these skills and capabilities, or treatment, people or treatment programs.
I'll just have to say, when I started my position in August of last year, I was calling people going, oh my gosh, what do I do? Help me, help me, help me. And I built a lot of relationships just on that. So, I say that to say that this is, we need you. We need to work together. This is an us thing, not us and you thing. This is like, how do we help each other? Because it really does take a village. And I rely on a lot of your expertise a lot. Amy can attest to that. What do I do in these situations? So I think that kind of wraps up our schedule for today. Just want to thank everybody for coming out, and then wanted to make sure we gave enough time to answer questions. Does anybody have any questions about anything that happened today? No? Okay. Well, my guess is once you start looking at the material and looking over the forms, the questions will arise. So please, please, please call me, email me. I'm happy to help walk you through the process. So thanks, everybody, for being here. Okay, bye.